changing gears a little bit, I am fascinated by your previous work experience and work life. Can you talk a little bit about what you did before Triangle and maybe some of the things that you brought from your previous experience to Triangle?
Sure. I have, a mixed background. I went to school for supply chain management. I spent some time, buying and planning for a company that did assembly. So that was kind of my first foray into, manufacturing. A lot of, it was mostly assembly. So we were purchasing everything. We weren't really making anything. So that was just me getting my feet wet and, being able to apply the things I learned at school to real business and how to manage your inventory, how to negotiate with suppliers, how to manage suppliers and delivery performance. So that was kind of where I started. Also was, worked a lot in food service, for the 5 years prior to working at Triangle. I was working for Levy Restaurants at the Barclays Center, where the Brooklyn Nets play, Islanders used to play. So working there was a very transformative experience, I would say. It really took me from my first entry-level job to a job that was much more high profile, a large people management job. My job my first job out of college, I had no reports. At the Barclays Center, I think I had about 500 people who reported into me through, other through a management team. But, it was a large department that I managed. So I think that high profile, it was high pressure. The Barclays Center had just opened, so I was part of the opening team. So it was kind of a brand new building, brand new equipment, brand new everything. And learning how to manage that and manage that large of a team through event work, which is completely different from manufacturing, where this is mostly 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and then you work extra when it's needed. That job was all nights and weekends, and it was a test, and I think I grew a lot from it. Learned a lot by just putting myself out there. I moved from upstate New York in Syracuse down to Brooklyn. It was my first time living in the city.
That's a big transition.
Yeah, there were a lot of changes happening at that point in my life, but I learned a lot. I remember when I was interviewing at Triangle, and I was asked the question of, how does your experience translate from, food service management to manufacturing? And I said, it's pretty much the same thing with different ingredients. And, making an assembly of a hydraulic torque wrench versus making a hamburger, you still got to have the right ingredients at the right place at the right time with the right people to put it together. That doesn't change. So, very different in the product, but the process can be very similar. So, I think there's those specific things of inventory management and process and planning. Those are all, the very tangible things that I brought over. But I think the larger things in my career that I brought over was just professionalism, communication, managing teams, cross-functional teams, bringing different talents to bear on problems. Those are probably the bigger things I learned that helped me here at Triangle.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend when I was living down in Philadelphia who was his company had a luxury box in what was then the First Union Center. I'm not even sure what the arena in Philadelphia is called now. But he would invite me to games all the time, and I used to say to him, "You've got the best job. All you do is go to Sixers games and Flyers games." And he said, "I'm here 27 nights out of the month. It gets old fast." So I can understand what it must have been like only working nights and weekends and odd hours and I'm sure you're not there to take the game in. You're there to make sure that all the fans are getting, the right experience. So
Yeah.
it's got to be a very different world to work in, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I'd look at the calendar, and we'd be, during basketball season, we'd be lucky to have 2-3 days off in the month where there wasn't an event.
Yeah.
I mean, being in New York City or any major city with a major arena, they try to book it as solid as possible. So, you try to take the little moments where, if there was a band coming to play that I really liked, try to go and sneak 5 minutes to go just watch them. But
Yeah.
that's really what you got was 5 minutes. You weren't sitting down in the seats for an hour watching the
No,
band.
you're there to work, right?
Exactly.
So you talked a little bit about the fact that you were on the opening team. I mean, what was it like having a brand new arena in New York City and all the expectations and obviously there are going to be unexpected challenges and bumps in the road. What was that like?
Eye-opening. I had actually in college worked at the Carrier Dome in Syracuse as a student, so I had some experience, which kind of led me to the job at the Barclays Center. But the Carrier Dome had been around by the time I started working there 25 years, and everything was established. There was, when you have people come in who've been making the same hot dogs, the same pizzas for 25 years, they come in and they know what they're doing. Working at a new arena, it was every single person didn't know how to do anything before we opened. I remember we had a very small dry run where we had people come in and actually open the concession stands and start making some food for a press tour that came around. And I just knew from my experience that was a very weak pre-opening, because an actual event is going to be very different. I remember our first event we had was a Jay-Z concert, and it was a sold out concert, and I just remember every manager, every person, every supervisor, everyone who was there, this was their first time doing that. So
Yeah.
it goes from the difference being managing people who know what they're doing is one thing and a challenge, but having to go in and teach every person, here's how you cook a hot dog, here's how you make this sandwich, here's how you clean this, here's how this piece of equipment works. When you yourself didn't know how they worked, so you were just, faking it to make them think you knew what you were doing. That was definitely an experience, and it was difficult. I remember the first 3 months working there, I was probably working, I think I estimated at one time, I was probably working 110, 120 hours a week, just nonstop, every day. My wife said I would come in at 3 a.m, I'd leave at 8 in the morning. So it was a challenge, but through that experience, the team that I worked with, the food service management team, by the end of that, we were very tight, and we all struggled through it together, worked through it together. So although difficult and hard, coming out of it at the end, we'd all accomplished something together. So that was a very cool feeling to have.